Have you ever walked a path and felt something more beneath your feet? Not just stone or earth, but centuries of footsteps, whispered prayers, and hidden meanings waiting to be uncovered. Imagine tracing the same routes medieval pilgrims traveled, not as a casual tourist, but as someone seeking the deeper codes woven into these ancient journeys. For generations, pilgrims walked paths like the Camino de Santiago or the road to Jerusalem, carrying hopes, fears, and a timeless human longing for connection and purpose. And buried within these sacred routes are 21 profound code symbols, rituals, and secrets that continue to shape the way we explore the world today. This isn't just a history lesson. It's an invitation to see travel in a wholly new light. Those scallop shells marking the way, the stories shared around firesides, the silent moments of reflection under starlit skies, they weren't random. They were part of a rich, intentional system of meaning, guiding pilgrims not only toward physical destinations, but toward inner transformation. And what's truly remarkable is how these codes live on in our modern travels, from the hostels where strangers become friends to the apps that help us navigate unknown lands with the same sense of wonder and trust that moved people centuries ago. In this video, we'll uncover these 21 codes one by one, exploring how medieval wisdom can deepen your own adventures. Whether you're planning a cross-country road trip, a backpacking journey through Europe, or simply curious about how the past speaks to the present, you're about to discover how pilgrimage routes taught the world to travel with intention, heart, and meaning. So come with me, let's walk these ancient paths together, decode their secrets, and bring their timeless lessons to life in your own wanderings. To truly grasp the depth of these hidden codes, we must first journey back in time and walk in the footsteps of those medieval pilgrims. Picture Europe and the Near East between the 5th and 15th centuries, a patchwork of kingdoms, empires, and isolated villages, where travel was perilous and knowledge was often locked away in monasteries. In this world, pilgrimage routes emerged as vital arteries, pulsing with more than just devout travelers. They were the internet of their day, complex networks moving people, goods, ideas, and innovations across vast and often divided landscapes. Take the Via Francigena, for instance. This wasn't just a trail from Canterbury to Rome. It was a 1,200-mile-long ribbon of cultural exchange. Merchants from the north carried wool and amber, meeting spice traders from the south in bustling market towns that sprouted along the way. Artisans and masons traveled these paths, bringing architectural styles from one region to another, which is why you might see Norman arches in Italian churches or Byzantine mosaics in French chapels. But it wasn't just tangible goods being traded. Stories, songs, scientific knowledge, and even news traveled with every pilgrim. A farmer from England might share new agricultural techniques with a monk from Burgundy, who would then record it in a manuscript. These routes became silent engines of progress, breaking down isolation and slowly weaving a more connected continent. And at the heart of it all was faith, a powerful motivator that compelled people to leave their homes and embark on journeys that could take years. For many, reaching Jerusalem, Rome, or Santiago de Compostela was a lifelong dream, a way to earn spiritual merit, seek healing, or find forgiveness. This deep, personal devotion meant that every aspect of the journey was infused with meaning. Travelers weren't just passing through a landscape, they were moving through a living tapestry of symbols and rituals. A simple spring along the path wasn't just a water source, it might be seen as a place of purification. A peculiarly shaped tree or a striking rock formation could become an unofficial shrine, layered with stories and offerings from those who passed. This constant interaction between people, place, and purpose is what turned these routes into living libraries of coded knowledge. The very stones underfoot told stories. Stonemasons carving cathedrals would embed symbols: a specific flower, a unique knot, a mythical creature, that held meanings known to the initiated, perhaps indicating safe havens or warning of local dangers. Monasteries that offered shelter weren't just buildings. They were repositories of wisdom where illuminated manuscripts preserved not only religious texts but also maps, medical remedies, and astronomical observations gathered from travelers. The rituals performed at waypoints, lighting a candle, touching a relic, singing a specific chant, were a form of lived language, a way to encode community values, historical memory, and spiritual beliefs into action. This rich historical context is the essential soil from which our 21 codes grew. Without understanding this world in motion, this incredible convergence of need, faith, and curiosity, the symbols we find might seem like mere decoration. But when we see them as part of a grand, centuries-old conversation between countless travelers and the landscapes they moved through, they transform into something far more powerful. A timeless guide to finding meaning on the road, left behind for us to rediscover. Now, let's turn our attention to the first and perhaps most immediately recognizable of these ancient codes, the language of waymarkers. Before the age of printed maps and digital voices from our phones, pilgrims relied on a silent, visual language etched into the very landscape. These weren't random scratches or casual graffiti. They were a sophisticated and intentional system of communication. Imagine walking a path through a dense, unfamiliar forest in a foreign land. Your only guide a series of symbols left by those who had journeyed before you. A scallop shell carved into a stone mile marker didn't just point the way to Santiago de Compostela. It whispered, "You are on the right path, and you are not alone." A simple cross chiseled into the bark of an oak tree might indicate a nearby spring or a safe place to rest, while a more complex symbol, like a specific arrangement of lines, could serve as a subtle warning to avoid a dangerous stretch of road or an area known for bandits. This system worked because it was built on a shared understanding, a kind of universal traveler's lexicon. The scallop shell, or vieira, is the perfect example. Found on the shores of Galicia, it became inextricably linked to the Camino. Pilgrims would carry one as proof of their completion, but along the route, the image of the shell served a far more practical purpose. Its grooves, all converging to a single point, mirrored the many routes pilgrims took, all converging on the cathedral. When painted on a rock or mounted on a building, the direction its hinge pointed indicated the way forward. This was genius in its simplicity, a symbol that was both a spiritual metaphor and a perfectly functional arrow, understandable to anyone regardless of their native tongue. Similarly, stacks of stones or cairns, built by passing travelers on mountain passes, provided both physical reassurance and a quiet camaraderie, a collective project saying, "I was here, and I added my stone to help guide you too." The profound truth of this first code is how utterly it has been absorbed into our modern travel experience. We may not think about it, but we are still fluent in this language of symbols. The international signs for airports, train stations, or hospitals are our modern scallop shells, universal pictograms designed to transcend language barriers. The glowing blue dot on our GPS that represents our location is a digital cairn, a reassuring marker in a virtual wilderness. The colored blazes on a hiking trail in a national park, the iconic logos of roadside attractions on highway signs, even the little stars we use to rate hotels and restaurants on review apps. All of these are direct descendants of those medieval waymarkers. They all serve the same core purpose: to reduce uncertainty, build trust, and create a sense of orientation in an otherwise unknown environment. This code teaches us that the most powerful guidance in travel often doesn't come from words but from shared symbols. It's a lesson in paying closer attention to the visual cues around us, whether we're navigating a new city subway system or a remote mountain trail. These symbols connect us not only to the path itself, but to the community of travelers, past and present, who have contributed to this silent, ongoing conversation. They remind us that the urge to leave a mark, to say, "This is the way," and to help those who will follow is a timeless human impulse, one that continues to shape every journey we take. After navigating by those silent stone symbols, a weary medieval pilgrim's most pressing need was for rest and refuge. This is where our second code comes to life, one that transformed simple shelter into something far more profound: the rituals of hospitality. Imagine ending a long, grueling day of travel, your feet sore and your spirit tested, only to arrive at a monastery hospice. You're not greeted with a simple transaction or a list of rules, but with a bowl of warm water to wash your dusty feet. This act, rooted in ancient religious texts, was about more than cleanliness. It was a powerful symbol of humility, service, and the leveling of all social status at the door. A nobleman and a common farmer, both pilgrims, would receive the same care, sharing a simple meal of bread, stew, and perhaps a cup of wine at a long wooden table. These rituals were a carefully crafted language of care. The sharing of food wasn't just about sustenance. It was a sacred act of communion, reinforcing that everyone on the path was part of a single community bound by a shared purpose. The offer of a straw-filled pallet for sleep in a great hall provided more than physical safety from the elements and dangers outside. It offered the psychological safety of belonging. This system of hospitality was largely built on the religious principle of Carita's selfless love and charity, viewing the stranger not as a threat, but as a potential embodiment of the divine. Monasteries saw hosting pilgrims as a duty to God, and in doing so, they created the world's first network of non-commercial, intention-driven accommodation. What's truly remarkable is how seamlessly this medieval code has been translated into our digital age. The spirit of those monastic hospices lives on vibrantly in modern practices. Platforms like Couchsurfing or servers aren't just websites for finding a free place to sleep. They are digital monasteries built on the very same principles of generosity, cultural exchange, and trust between strangers. The host who offers a spare room and a home-cooked meal is performing a contemporary version of that ancient ritual of welcome. Similarly, the homestays arranged through various platforms allow travelers to step directly into the daily life of a local family, sharing their food and their stories, transforming a tourist stop into a genuine human connection. This code teaches us that the deepest travel experiences often happen when we move beyond the transactional and embrace the relational. Choosing a homestay over an anonymous hotel, or sharing a meal with a host instead of eating alone, is a conscious decision to participate in this ancient ritual. It's a recognition that the heart of travel isn't just about seeing new places, but about meeting new people and building bridges of mutual understanding. By embracing these opportunities for hospitality, we do more than just find a place to rest. We honor a timeless tradition that has, for centuries, reminded us that the world is full of potential friends, and that a journey becomes truly meaningful through the heartfelt encounters we have along the way. After the quiet comfort of a night's shelter, the next sound a pilgrim would often hear was the human voice, rising and falling in the familiar rhythm of a story. This brings us to our third code, one that turned long, arduous miles into shared adventure: the art of storytelling. Picture a group of travelers huddled around a fire at a roadside inn, their faces illuminated by the flickering flames. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke and stew, but it's also charged with anticipation. A merchant from Flanders begins to tell of a narrow escape from bandits in a mountain pass, his tale growing more dramatic with each telling. An elderly nun follows, recounting a vision of a saint she'd heard about from a shepherd, a story that offered hope and divine reassurance. These weren't just idle tales to pass the time. They were a vital currency of the road, a way to encode practical information, moral lessons, and deep cultural values into a form that was easily remembered and eagerly passed along. These stories served multiple ingenious purposes. A harrowing account of a swollen river crossing served as a crucial warning for those a few days behind on the trail, effectively functioning as an early travel advisory. A miraculous tale of a healing spring gave a specific location a powerful allure, drawing pilgrims to a site they might otherwise have missed. But beyond the practical, these narratives built an invisible yet unbreakable bond between strangers. Sharing personal fears and wonders around that fire created instant camaraderie, transforming a collection of solitary travelers into a temporary community. The stories also preserved history in an age before widespread literacy. The legend of a particular knight's bravery or the miracle attributed to a local saint became the living history of the route itself, a tapestry of fact and faith woven together by countless retellings, each traveler adding their own thread to the growing narrative. This ancient impulse to narrate our journeys is arguably more powerful today than ever before. Our campfires may be digital screens, but the ritual remains unchanged. A travel vlogger filming their reaction to seeing the Himalayas for the first time is sharing that same awe the medieval pilgrim felt upon first glimpsing the spires of Jerusalem. A detailed blog post reviewing a hostel in Rome, complete with photos of a wobbly bunk bed, is the modern equivalent of that merchant's warning about a particular innkeeper. Platforms like Instagram and YouTube are our global roadside inns, where we gather to share our tales, our recommendations, and our wide-eyed wonder with a community of fellow travelers spread across the globe. We are still encoding our experiences into stories, using them to guide, inspire, and connect with others on the same path, even if we never meet them in person. The enduring power of this code reminds us that the value of a journey is often crystallized in the telling. We don't just travel to see things, we travel to have stories to share. This act of reflection and narration is what transforms a simple vacation into a meaningful pilgrimage of its own. It forces us to process what we've seen, to find the humor in the mishaps and the profundity in the beautiful moments. By telling our stories, whether to friends over dinner or to strangers online, we do more than just remember our trip. We affirm its importance, cement its lessons, and offer our own hard-won wisdom as a gift to the next traveler, just as pilgrims have done for 1,000 years. While the shared stories around the fire provided a map of human experience, the pilgrims also relied on a far grander and more ancient map stretched above them each night, the cosmos itself. This brings us to our fourth code, a practice that required travelers to look up from the well-worn path and find their way by the silent, majestic movements of the heavens. Before the compass was widely used in Europe and centuries before satellite signals, celestial navigation was not just a skill, it was a profound form of dialogue between the traveler, the natural world, and the divine. A pilgrim walking the Via Francigena under a clear night sky didn't just see random specks of light, they saw a familiar, rotating clockwork of constellations. The North Star, Polaris, became a fixed, trustworthy point of reference, a celestial waymarker far more constant than any stone on the ground. By learning its position, a traveler could maintain a general northern bearing, a crucial skill when crossing featureless plains or dense, unfamiliar forests. But this code went far beyond simple stellar mechanics. The sun itself was a primary guide. Its arc across the sky dictated the rhythm of the day, with its rising in the east and setting in the west providing a reliable east-west axis. Pilgrims learned to read the subtle shifts in its trajectory with the changing seasons, understanding that a midday sun lower in the sky meant the deepening of winter and the need to plan for shorter travel days. They observed how sunlight fell through specific arches in monasteries built with intentional alignments, perhaps illuminating a particular altar only on the summer solstice, turning architecture into a giant calendar and solar observatory. This method of travel required immense patience and quiet observation. It was a slow, deliberate form of navigation that stood in stark contrast to our modern, frantic turn-by-turn directions. It encoded a deep respect for natural rhythms and fostered a humility that comes from understanding your own small place within a vast, orderly universe. There was also a powerful layer of faith woven into this practice. Many pilgrims saw the predictable, beautiful movements of the stars not as cold astronomy, but as a visible expression of God's orderly design. Following the stars was an act of trust, a belief that the same hand that set the cosmos in motion was gently guiding their individual steps. This ancient practice of finding our way by the sky is far from a lost art. It has simply evolved into a new form of seeking. While we may rely on our phones for efficiency, the longing for that celestial connection remains deeply ingrained in the modern travel experience. We see it in the incredible popularity of dark sky parks and astrotourism, where people travel great distances to simply lie on their backs under a blanket of stars, experiencing the same awe and wonder that a medieval pilgrim felt. We see it in the renewed interest in learning basic orienteering, using an analog compass and the sun's position, a skill that still brings a tremendous sense of self-reliance and confidence in the wilderness. Even the simple, unconscious act of feeling the warmth of the sun on one side of your face to maintain a general direction during a day hike is a direct link to this ancient code. It reminds us that the most sophisticated technology can sometimes distance us from a more intuitive, embodied sense of place. Reconnecting with these oldest methods, even for a brief moment on a camping trip, isn't about rejecting modernity. It's about reclaiming a sense of adventure and the quiet humility that comes from navigating by the same grand, celestial signs that have guided humans for millennia. It's a code that teaches us to slow down, to observe, and to remember that sometimes the most reliable guide isn't in your pocket, but shining down on you from millions of miles away. This meticulous attention to geometric design wasn't merely for show. It was a deeply embedded code meant to elevate the physical act of walking into a profound spiritual and psychological experience. Consider the labyrinth. Unlike a maze designed to confuse, the labyrinth found in many medieval cathedrals, like the famous one at Chartres, is a single, winding path leading inexorably to a center and back out again. Walking its circuitous route was a powerful metaphor for the pilgrim's own journey, a symbolic pilgrimage to Jerusalem for those who could not make the actual voyage. The path's twists and turns represented the complexities and challenges of life, while the unwavering progression toward the center symbolized a soul's journey toward God. This was sacred geometry in action, using a precise mathematical pattern to encode a universal human experience of seeking, struggle, and eventual arrival. This principle extended far beyond the cathedral floor to the routes themselves. Some scholars argue that long stretches of the Camino de Santiago were intentionally aligned with the Milky Way, earning it the ancient nickname Via Lactea, a celestial mirror of the earthly path guiding travelers westward. The layout of certain monastic complexes along the Via Francigena often incorporated the golden ratio or the proportions of the cross into their design, so that simply approaching the building would subconsciously prepare a pilgrim for prayer and contemplation. Even the placement of wayside crosses or chapels was frequently calculated with geometric precision, creating intentional sightlines or aligning with the sunrise on a specific saint's feast day. These designs transformed the entire landscape into a living, breathing cathedral without walls, where every step was a prayer and every horizon was framed by divine intention. The legacy of this fifth code is powerfully evident in the world around us today, though we might not always recognize its ancient origins. Modern urban planners and landscape architects frequently use these very same principles to create spaces that feel inherently right and uplifting. The sweeping, graceful curves of a beloved city park pathway, designed to slow you down and encourage reflection, are a direct descendant of the Labyrinth's mindful meandering. The awe-inspiring symmetry of the National Mall in Washington, D.C., leading the eye and the body toward the Lincoln Memorial, uses the same geometric intentionality to evoke a sense of national purpose and reverence that a medieval route used for spiritual devotion. Even in contemporary trail design, the careful consideration of switchbacks on a mountain path isn't just about managing incline. It's about controlling pace, framing breathtaking vistas at just the right moment to maximize their emotional impact, turning a strenuous hike into a sequence of rewarding revelations. Understanding this code invites us to become more conscious consumers of the spaces we move through. It asks us to look beyond a path's function, to get from a to be, and to feel its form. Why does a particular street feel so vibrant and inviting while another feels cold and alienating? Often, the answer lies in these timeless principles of proportion, symbolism, and intentional alignment. When we appreciate that a beautifully designed trail or urban walkway is engaging in an ancient dialogue between human movement and meaningful form, our travel becomes richer. We start to see that the most transformative journeys are often those where the path itself is not just a means to an end, but a teacher, guiding us not only through a landscape but toward a deeper understanding of beauty, order, and our own place within it. Imagine for a moment that you are a medieval pilgrim far from home, approaching the gates of a great monastery. You're tired, perhaps a little weary, and you need to prove you are who you claim to be, a genuine pilgrim, not a vagabond or a fraud. Your most valuable possession in this moment isn't your money or your meager supplies. It's a simple, often beautifully illustrated document you carry, your Pilgrim Credential. This was the sixth code, a sophisticated system of identity and trust that turned a piece of parchment or vellum into a powerful key, a diary, and a badge of honor all in one. These credentials were far more than just travel papers. They were a physical manifestation of a pilgrim's intention and progress, meticulously stamped or signed by authorized religious figures at each major stop along the route. The process of collecting these stamps or cellos was a ritual in itself. At each hospice, monastery, or cathedral chapter house, a pilgrim would present their credential to be marked with a unique seal, perhaps an intricate coat of arms, a stylized symbol of a saint, or the distinct imprint of a particular religious order. This wasn't a bureaucratic hurdle. It was a moment of official recognition, a sacred receipt that said, "You were here, you completed this leg of your journey." This system served multiple crucial purposes. For the pilgrim, it was a tangible record of their accomplishment, a growing mosaic of stamps that visually narrated their perseverance and devotion. For the authorities, it provided a way to manage the flow of travelers, ensure only those on a genuine spiritual quest received charitable aid and shelter, and protect communities from those who might abuse the network of hospitality. It encoded a system of mutual accountability and safety, creating a trusted community of wayfarers who are all playing by the same, understood rules. The profound resonance of this medieval code in our modern world is almost startling. That Pilgrim Credential is the direct ancestor of the passport you carry today. Think about it, we still present a document to cross a border, its pages filled with stamps and visas that tell the story of our movements, our adventures, and our encounters with foreign bureaucracies. Each stamp, the intricate lion of Singapore, the bold eagle of the United States, the geometric patterns of a Shenzhen visa is a modern cello, a mark of permission and passage. But the evolution continues. Digital badges on travel apps, loyalty status with airlines, even the collection of patches on a backpack or pins on a hat, these are all contemporary credentials. They are silent testaments to where we've been and what we've achieved, from reaching the summit of a mountain to completing a renowned long-distance trail. They foster a sense of community among travelers. Spotting a fellow hiker with the same Appalachian Trail patch instantly creates a bond of shared experience, just as two pilgrims with credentials from the same remote monastery would have recognized each other as kindred spirits centuries ago. This code reveals a deep and enduring human truth about travel. We have a fundamental need to document our journey, to have physical proof of our metamorphosis from a curious outsider to an experienced traveler. A stamp in a passport is never just an ink mark, it's a container for a memory. It's the story of the long queue at the border, the taste of the first unfamiliar meal in that new country, the sound of a language you don't yet understand. The Pilgrim Credential taught us that documentation is not the opposite of adventure. It is its faithful scribe. It bridges the purely practical need for identification with the deeply personal narrative of transformation, ensuring that long after the journey ends, we hold in our hands not just a record of where we went, but a map of who we became along the way. After navigating by the stars and finding shelter through sacred geometry, a pilgrim might then encounter a stretch of the journey that demanded a different kind of navigation altogether, an inward turn guided by the seventh code, the profound practice of silence and reflection. This wasn't merely a suggestion to be quiet, it was a deeply intentional ritual, often observed for the final 100 kilometers of a journey or upon entering particularly holy valleys. Imagine walking for hours, the only sounds being the crunch of your own footsteps on the path, the sigh of the wind through the trees, and the distant call of a bird. Without the distraction of conversation, your mind, initially restless, would gradually begin to settle. The constant internal chatter would fade, making space for a deeper, more acute awareness of your surroundings and your own inner state. You'd notice the subtle change in the light filtering through the leaves, the scent of the earth after a rain, and the weight of your own thoughts and emotions without the usual noise to bury them. This enforced silence was a form of spiritual and psychological architecture. It was designed to strip away the superficial layers of identity and social noise, allowing pilgrims to confront themselves with raw honesty. Monastic guides understood that true listening to the divine, to the wisdom of the natural world, and to the quiet voice of one's own conscience could only happen in a space of inner and outer stillness. It encoded the radical idea that some of the most important discoveries on a journey are not found in grand cathedrals or bustling market towns, but in the quiet landscape of one's own heart. This practice transformed the path from a simple physical challenge into a true pilgrimage of self-discovery, where the destination within became just as significant as the one on the map. The powerful allure of this ancient code is experiencing a massive resurgence in our hyper-connected, perpetually noisy modern world. the entire wellness travel industry, with its silent meditation retreats, digital detox cabins, and mindfulness hiking tours, is a direct and conscious embrace of this medieval wisdom. People are actively seeking out experiences that force them to put away their phones, stop talking, and simply be present. They are recognizing that constant stimulation and digital connectivity, while offering the illusion of togetherness, can actually create a deep sense of disconnection from our environment, from the people right in front of us, and most importantly, from ourselves. These modern silent retreats are the new monastic hospices, offering a structured space to practice the same kind of deep listening that pilgrims valued centuries ago. This code offers a crucial lesson for any traveler today, regardless of their destination. It reminds us that we don't have to embark on a formal silent retreat to incorporate its wisdom. It might simply mean deciding to walk the last hour of a day hike without podcasts or music, allowing the natural soundscape to become your companion. It could be choosing a seat on a train journey to simply watch the landscape roll by instead of immediately filling the time with screen-based entertainment. These small acts of intentional silence create pockets of reflection amidst the journey, allowing for a deeper absorption of the experience. They create the mental space where a fleeting moment of beauty, a stunning sunset over a foreign city, the genuine smile from a street vendor can resonate deeply, transforming from a simple observation into a lasting memory. By consciously unplugging, even briefly, we honor this ancient code and open ourselves up to the subtle, profound teachers that only silence can provide. Following the profound inner journey guided by silence, the pilgrim's path would then lead them directly into the raw, untamed power of the natural world, engaging with our eighth code, the deeply symbolic use of natural elements. This wasn't a passive sightseeing tour. It was an active, ritualistic dialogue with the landscape, where every mountain, river, and cave was seen not just as a physical feature, but as a living scripture filled with meaning. A simple spring bubbling up from the earth was rarely just a place to fill a waterskin. It was a sacred site of purification. Pilgrims would pause to drink, to wash their faces, and perhaps to offer a prayer, physically enacting the spiritual cleansing they sought on their journey. The water itself was a symbol of renewal, washing away not just the dust of the road but the metaphorical grime of past mistakes, offering a chance to begin each new day with a fresh spirit. This symbolic interaction extended to the most daunting features of the landscape. A towering mountain pass wasn't merely an obstacle to be overcome. It was a deliberate test of faith and perseverance, a physical manifestation of a spiritual challenge. The arduous, breathless climb represented the struggle against sin and doubt, while reaching the summit offered a breathtaking vista that was seen as a foretaste of divine revelation or heavenly reward. Similarly, dark, mysterious caves like the one associated with St. Patrick's Purgatory in Ireland were often viewed as portals to the underworld or places of profound introspection, where a pilgrim could symbolically descend into their own fears and emerge reborn. By engaging with these elements, ritualistically touching a specific stone, circling a particular tree, or bathing in a holy well, pilgrims encoded the landscape with a layer of narrative and meaning. They were not passing through a neutral space, they were moving through a participatory story where nature itself was a primary character and teacher, offering lessons in resilience, humility, and the cyclical nature of life, death, and renewal. This ancient, immersive way of experiencing the wild is the very heart of the modern ecotourism and adventure travel movements. When a company offers a guided trek to a remote waterfall with time for meditation and reflection, they are channeling the pilgrim's ritual at the sacred spring. The immense popularity of challenge-based travel, climbing Mount Kilimanjaro, rafting the Grand Canyon, or hiking the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, is a direct continuation of that symbolic ascent of the mountain. Participants aren't just seeking a physical thrill, they are consciously seeking transformation through struggle. They want to be tested by the elements and to emerge on the other side with a renewed sense of their own strength and capability, much like a pilgrim standing victorious on a high ridge after a difficult climb. The natural world is no longer just a backdrop for these activities. It is the active, essential agent of change. This code reveals a timeless truth that we are hardwired to find profound meaning in the raw power of nature. It teaches us that the most memorable travel experiences are often those where we engage with the elements directly and intentionally. It's about choosing to swim in that cold, clear lake instead of just taking a picture of it, or deciding to sit quietly in a forest and simply listen, rather than racing through it to get to the next destination. By doing so, we do more than just appreciate the view. We participate in an ancient dialogue. We allow the steadfastness of a mountain to remind us of our own resilience, the flow of a river to inspire us to release what no longer serves us, and the vastness of a starlit sky to reconnect us with a sense of wonder. This code invites us to see every natural landscape we encounter not as a resource to be consumed, but as a wise and powerful teacher, waiting to offer its age-old lessons to any traveler willing to listen. Now, after the profound quiet of reflection and the raw encounter with nature, the journey would often find its rhythm again through a powerful and unifying force, the human voice raised in song. This brings us to our ninth code, one that turned the monotonous crunch of footsteps into a moving symphony, the role of music and chant. Imagine a line of weary travelers, their packs heavy and the sun high, trudging through a seemingly endless stretch of road. The silence is broken not by complaint, but by a single voice starting a familiar Latin hymn. One by one, others join in, their voices weaving together into a strong, rhythmic chant that seems to lift the very weight from their shoulders. This was not mere entertainment. It was a vital survival tool and a sophisticated auditory language. The steady, repetitive rhythms of Gregorian chants or simple folk walking songs provided a metronome for the march, synchronizing footsteps and breathing, making the physical exertion more efficient and sustainable over long distances. But the purpose of these songs ran far deeper than setting a pace. The lyrics themselves were often rich with theological symbolism and stories of saints, serving as a mobile catechism that reinforced the pilgrim's purpose with every verse. A chant about the resurrection offered hope and endurance. A song recounting the martyrdom of a saint provided a model of perseverance. This auditory code also forged an incredible sense of unity. In an era where travelers came from dozens of different regions and spoke varied dialects, music became a universal tongue. A pilgrim from Germany might not share a common language with one from Spain, but they could both sing the same Salve Regina, instantly creating a bond of shared faith and shared experience. The sound of collective singing rolling across the countryside was a beacon of camaraderie, a sonic signal to any isolated traveler that a community was near, offering safety and fellowship in an often perilous world. It encoded a powerful psychological truth that we can endure far more together and with a song in our hearts than we ever can alone. This ancient need to soundtrack our journeys is something we fulfill with every curated travel playlist on our phones today. That upbeat mix you create for a road trip, designed to keep you alert and energized through hours of highway driving, is the direct descendant of the pilgrim's walking chants. The practice of immersing yourself in local music while traveling, seeking out a flamenco performance in Seville, a traditional pub session in Ireland, or a drum circle in West Africa, is a modern way of using sound to encode the cultural essence of a place into your memory. The haunting melody of a particular song heard on a trip can, years later, instantly transport you back to the scent of the air and the feeling of that moment with an emotional clarity that photos alone cannot achieve. Even the simple, instinctive act of whistling a tune while hiking a lonely trail continues this timeless tradition, using music as a companion to ward off solitude and fill the silence with a familiar, comforting presence. This code teaches us that music is one of travel's most potent and underrated tools for connection to a place, to its people, and to our own evolving experience. It encourages us to be intentional about the soundscape of our journeys. Instead of always defaulting to a podcast, what if we sometimes walked through a new city listening to its own native music? Or hiked in silence for a while, allowing the natural soundtrack of the landscape to become our chant? By tuning into the auditory layer of travel, we engage in an ancient ritual that has, for centuries, used rhythm and melody to transform arduous treks into joyful processions, solitary walks into shared celebrations, and simple movement into a deeply resonant, unforgettable journey. Following the shared songs that lifted spirits and synced footsteps, the weary pilgrim's next profound moment of relief often came not from a person or a tune, but from a building itself. As they rounded a bend in the road, the sight of a monastery hospice or a sturdy stone bridge wasn't just a functional landmark. It was a visual promise of rest, a structure designed to communicate safety and sanctuary long before a single word of welcome was spoken. This is our 10th code, the silent, powerful language of architectural design. These medieval builders were master psychologists, intuitively understanding that the very form of a building could shape human emotion and behavior. They encoded values of protection, spiritual passage, and communal warmth directly into the stone and timber. Consider the humble yet profound arched doorway of a monastic hospice. Its curve wasn't just a structural solution to hold up the weight of the wall. It was a powerful symbol of passage and transition. To step through an archway was to physically and metaphorically cross a threshold from the dangerous, unpredictable outside world into a space of order, safety, and divine protection. The arch framed the entrance as a sacred event, a moment of leaving one state of being and entering another. Similarly, the use of light was meticulously calculated. Light wells and strategically placed windows would often channel a single, brilliant shaft of sunlight to illuminate a specific altar, a statue, or a simple cross on the wall. This wasn't merely about illumination. It was a dramatic representation of divinity, a tangible manifestation of heavenly grace reaching down into the human realm. The building itself became a conduit for the sacred, using the most elemental of materials, stone and light, to create an atmosphere of awe and inspiration that comforted every traveler who stepped inside. This architectural genius for conveying meaning through form is a code that has been seamlessly translated into our modern travel infrastructure, though we often experience it subconsciously. Walk into a major international airport terminal today, and you are walking into a direct descendant of those medieval hospices. Soaring, vaulted ceilings evoke the same sense of grandeur and possibility as a cathedral nave, lifting our spirits and diminishing the stress of travel. The expansive use of glass walls creates a connection to the sky and the outside world, much like those light wells channeling the divine, fostering a sense of openness and optimism rather than claustrophobia. Even the layout is designed to guide and comfort. Clear, long sightlines to gates reduce anxiety, while strategically placed alcoves with comfortable seating offer moments of quiet refuge amidst the chaos, echoing the quiet corners of a monastery where a pilgrim could find solitude. The code extends to more intimate spaces as well. The modern boutique hostel or the thoughtfully designed train station often incorporates these ancient principles. Warm, natural materials like wood and stone are used to create a sense of earthy welcome and durability. Entrances are designed to be open and inviting, not fortress-like. The flow of space is arranged to encourage chance encounters and conversation among strangers in common areas, fostering the same sense of temporary community that a pilgrim would find in a shared dormitory. This is architecture not just as shelter, but as a silent host. It speaks to us without words, telling us we are safe, we are welcome, and we are part of something larger than ourselves. By understanding this code, we become more aware of how the spaces we move through on our journeys are actively shaping our experience, offering comfort and guidance through their very design, continuing a timeless tradition of building not just for the body, but for the soul of the traveler. This reliance on barter and exchange created a unique economic ecosystem along the pilgrimage routes, one built not on the cold abstraction of coinage, but on the warm, tangible reality of human need and generosity. A pilgrim from the olive groves of Italy might trade a small flask of precious oil for a sturdy pair of woolen socks knitted by a shepherd's wife in the French Alps. A wandering minstrel could offer a song or a much-needed joke in exchange for a place by the fire and a bowl of stew. Perhaps most valuable of all was the trade in stories and information, a detailed description of the path ahead in return for a warning about a washed-out bridge a day's journey back. This system encoded a radical form of economics rooted in perceived value and mutual benefit rather than fixed prices. It required travelers to see each other not as potential customers to be exploited, but as partners in a shared endeavor. It fostered an incredible sense of resourcefulness, forcing pilgrims to consider what skills or goods they carried that could be of value to others, and in doing so, it built a powerful web of trust that connected people across vast cultural and linguistic divides. The act of bartering was a conversation, a negotiation that demanded eye contact, gesture, and a shared understanding of fairness, creating moments of genuine human connection that a simple coin toss could never achieve. The spirit of this 11th code is vibrantly alive in the most enriching corners of the modern travel experience. Wander through the bustling artisan markets of Osaka or the night bazaars of Chiang Mai, and you are witnessing the direct descendant of the pilgrim's marketplace. While currency is now used, the core of the exchange remains deeply personal and relational. The act of haggling, when done with respect, is not about winning or losing. It's a ritual of engagement, a dance that ends with both the buyer and the seller feeling a sense of accomplishment and mutual respect. You're not just buying a blanket, you're learning about the weaver's techniques, her family, and the symbolism in the patterns. This code extends far beyond physical goods into the very heart of the sharing economy. Platforms like Workaway or Worldpackers are the digital equivalent of the medieval hospice, facilitating exchanges where travelers offer a few hours of gardening, painting, or childcare in return for room and board. This isn't about working for a wage, it's about skills sharing and cultural immersion, about becoming a temporary part of a household and a community. Even the simple act of a local showing you their favorite cafe in exchange for you practicing English with them is a form of modern barter, a transaction that builds a bridge of friendship and understanding far sturdier than any paid tour could provide. This ancient practice offers a crucial lesson for the contemporary traveler. It invites us to consciously move away from transactional tourism, where every experience has a fixed price and every interaction is mediated by money, and toward a model of travel built on reciprocity and genuine exchange. It encourages us to think about what we can offer, not just what we can buy. Perhaps you're a photographer who can offer to take portraits for a family in exchange for joining their meal. Maybe you're a musician who can share a song, Or perhaps your most valuable currency is simply a respectful curiosity and a willingness to listen. By engaging in these small acts of barter, we do more than just save money. We actively participate in creating a more meaningful and equitable travel economy. We acknowledge that the richest souvenirs are not things we purchase, but the connections we forge and the mutual respect we earn, continuing a 1,000-year-old tradition that proves the most fulfilling journeys are built not on what we spend, but on what we are willing to share. This profound connection to celestial and seasonal rhythms forms our 12th code, an ancient practice of aligning travel with the grand, predictable cycles of the natural world. For a medieval pilgrim, setting out on a journey was never a decision made lightly or on a random whim. It was a calculation deeply intertwined with the turning of the year and the phases of the moon. Embarking on the Via Francigena in the dead of winter was tantamount to folly, a sure way to encounter impassable mountain snows, treacherous icy paths, and a scarcity of food as rural communities hunkered down. The wise traveler waited for the spring, when the earth itself seemed to bless their undertaking. The days grew longer, the roads became more passable, and the countryside burst with new life, symbolizing the spiritual rebirth they sought. This wasn't just about practicality, it was a form of sympathetic magic, moving in harmony with a season of growth to invite inner growth. The lunar cycle held its own powerful sway over the timing of a pilgrimage. A full moon was a celestial bonfire in the night sky, extending the hours of safe travel and illuminating paths that would be dangerously obscure under a new moon. Many major religious festivals, like Easter, are themselves calculated based on a lunisolar calendar, directly tying the most sacred communal celebrations to these cosmic patterns. To undertake a journey aligned with a festival was to plug into a powerful current of collective energy and intention. Arriving in Rome during Holy Week or reaching Jerusalem for a major feast day meant joining a massive international gathering of the faithful. The experience was amplified exponentially, transforming a personal quest into a shared, generation-defining event. This code encoded a deep humility and respect, acknowledging that human plans are best laid within the framework of a much larger, older, and wiser natural order. Today, this ancient wisdom is experiencing a magnificent renaissance, though we might now call it seasonal travel or astrotourism. The impulse is identical. We instinctively understand that a visit to the cherry blossom festivals of Japan in spring is a completely different experience from a winter trip to see the same landscapes shrouded in snow. Each season offers its own unique magic and emotional resonance. We chase the northern lights in the deep, dark winters of Scandinavia and Iceland, timing our trips to solar activity and lunar darkness to maximize our chance of witnessing the aurora's dance, a modern pilgrimage to see a celestial miracle. Tour companies now offer meticulously planned trips to witness a total solar eclipse in its path of totality, creating spontaneous communities of awe-struck travelers who have gathered for a fleeting, profound astronomical event, much like medieval pilgrims converging for a rare holy year. This code invites us to be more conscious and poetic in how we plan our own adventures. It encourages us to ask not just where do I want to go, but when is the best time to be there to truly feel its essence. It might mean planning a hike through the New England forests at the absolute peak of autumn foliage, when the hills are on fire with color, or visiting the temples of Angkor Wat during the shoulder season when the light is soft and the crowds are thin. It's about recognizing that a beach has a different personality in the wild waves of winter than in the calm warmth of summer. By syncing our travels with the rhythms of the earth and the sky, we do more than just get better weather or good photos. We engage in a timeless ritual. We acknowledge that we are part of a natural world far grander than ourselves, and we open ourselves up to experiences that are not just trips, but seasonal chapters in the story of our lives, filled with the unique beauty and meaning that only perfect timing can provide. Beyond the shared meals and the rhythm of the seasons, a medieval traveler carried their identity not in a wallet or a phone, but on their very back, woven into the fabric of their clothes. This is our 13th code, a silent but powerful language of dress that communicated purpose, status, and community to everyone they met on the road. The classic pilgrim's uniform was unmistakable: a long, coarse woolen cloak for protection against the elements, a wide-brimmed hat to shield from sun and rain, and a sturdy staff for support and defense. But these were far more than just practical items. They were a walking declaration of intent. To don this specific attire was to tell the world and to remind oneself, I am not a merchant, not a soldier, not a vagabond. I am a pilgrim. This visual signal immediately granted a form of social license, commanding a certain level of respect and triggering the codes of hospitality from those who recognized it. A farmer seeing this distinct silhouette approaching on the horizon would understand this was a traveler to be aided, not feared. The symbolism woven into these garments ran deep. The coarse, simple fabric was a deliberate choice, encoding the virtues of humility and poverty. By shedding the fine clothes that might denote their social standing at home, pilgrims sought to create a temporary equality on the road, where a noble and a peasant could be united by their shared purpose and identical garb. Their possessions were carried in a simple scrip or leather pouch, symbolizing a reliance on providence and the generosity of others. Every element, from the way the cloak was fastened to the type of shell or cross sewn onto the hat, could indicate their specific destination or the group they were traveling with, creating an instant visual kinship with fellow pilgrims from distant lands. Their clothing was a portable, wearable credential, a non-verbal language that fostered immediate camaraderie and built a mobile community bound by a common visual identity. This ancient practice of using apparel to signify our journey and our values is more prevalent today than we might realize. While we may not wear hooded cloaks, our modern travel wardrobes are just as coded. The high-performance gear of a serious backpacker, the moisture-wicking fabrics, the broken-in hiking boots, the multi-pocketed vests is a uniform that signals experience, preparedness, and a specific approach to adventure. It tells other hikers on the trail that you are part of their tribe, sharing a common language of gear brands and a respect for the wilderness. Conversely, the conscious choice to pack and wear clothing respectful of local customs when visiting a mosque in Istanbul or a temple in Bangkok is a modern form of this code, using dress to show respect and intention, signaling a desire to connect with rather than intrude upon a culture. Even the simple act of buying a traditional garment from a local market and wearing it during your stay is a way of adopting a temporary identity, of visually saying, I wish to understand and honor this place. This code reveals a profound truth about the psychology of travel. What we wear directly influences how we experience a journey and how the world experiences us. Functional clothing empowers us to engage more deeply with challenging environments, from mountain trails to bustling cities. Culturally appropriate attire opens doors and hearts, facilitating connections that might otherwise remain closed. And the simple, practical comfort of the right clothes allows us to forget about our appearance and fully immerse ourselves in the moment. Our travel wardrobe is our armor and our ambassador, a carefully curated collection that protects our body while projecting our intentions, continuing a timeless tradition where the clothes on our back are the first and most silent story we tell about who we are and why we have come. Amidst the rhythm of walking and the weight of their pack, a medieval pilgrim carried something far lighter yet infinitely heavier with meaning. a small, physical token of their faith. This might be a sliver of wood said to be from the true cross, a cloth touched to the bones of a saint, or simply a smooth stone picked up from a riverbank near a holy site. This 14th code, the powerful use of relics and tokens, speaks to a profound human instinct, the desire to anchor our most intangible hopes and memories to a tangible object. For the pilgrim, these items were not mere souvenirs, they were conduits. A relic was believed to carry a spark of the divine, offering literal protection from the very real dangers of the road bandits, illness, or getting lost. Holding it during a moment of fear was a physical act of reaching for grace, a way to feel connected to a heavenly power that seemed distant and abstract when faced with a storm on a lonely mountain pass. But the power of these objects extended far beyond the supernatural. They also served as powerful psychological anchors. A simple, worn stone from a river near their home village could be a touchstone for memory, a physical connection to everything and everyone they had left behind. Rubbing its smooth surface during a lonely evening was a ritual of remembrance, a way to combat the homesickness and doubt that were constant companions on such a long journey. These tokens encoded the entire narrative of their pilgrimage into a single, portable artifact. A scallop shell from the coast of Spain wasn't just a symbol of Santiago, it was the entire story of the blistered feet, the shared meals, and the final, triumphant approach to the cathedral, all contained in a single, brittle object. The relic or token became a physical bookmark in the story of their life, a story they could hold in their hand and share with others upon their return, using the object as a prop to begin the tale. This is from when we are no different today. We have simply secularized the relic, the magnet on our refrigerator, the shot glass from a beach bar, the worn-out concert t-shirt. These are our modern tokens. They may not be believed to ward off evil spirits, but they absolutely serve the same dual purpose of comfort and memory. That cheap snow globe from a family trip to the city isn't just a piece of plastic, it's a vessel. Shaking it and watching the glitter swirl is a tiny ritual that instantly transports us back to the feeling of wonder on our child's face, seeing the skyline for the first time. A seasoned traveler might carry a lucky keychain or a specific pen used to jot down notes in every journal, a personal totem that lends a sense of continuity and familiarity across a lifetime of disparate journeys. And in our digital age, this need has exploded into a new realm. The thousands of photos on our phones are our new relics. We curate them, we revisit them, and we share them not just to show where we've been, but to re-experience who we were in that moment. A video clip with the sound of crashing waves and laughter is a powerful sensory token that can evoke the warmth of the sun and the taste of salt air years later. This enduring code reveals something fundamental about how we process experience. Our memories are fluid and elusive, but an object is solid. It exists outside of us. By collecting and cherishing these tangible pieces of our journeys, we are performing an ancient alchemy, turning the fleeting magic of a moment into something we can hold onto forever. It is a way of making the abstract concrete, of building a museum of our own lived adventures, one sacred, silly, and deeply personal relic at a time. After the long, dusty hours spent in silent reflection or navigating by the sun, the sound of a bell ringing out from a monastery hospice would signal one of the most anticipated moments of a pilgrim's day, the communal meal. This was far more than a simple stop for caloric refueling. It was the 15th code, a deeply ritualized practice where sharing food became a powerful enactment of equality, gratitude, and human connection. Picture the scene: dozens of travelers from every corner of Europe and every rung of the social ladder, from landless peasants to minor nobility, all sitting together on the same rough-hewn benches. Before a single bite of coarse bread or bowl of lentil stew was taken, a prayer of thanks would be offered, not only for the nourishment but for the hands that prepared it and the safe passage that brought them all together. In that moment, the hierarchies of the outside world were dissolved by the simple, leveling act of a shared hunger. The nobleman's hands were as empty as the farmer's. Both were equally dependent on the generosity of their hosts and the grace of God. This was the sacred heart of the practice. Breaking bread with strangers was not just a social nicety, but a spiritual discipline that encoded the radical idea that at our most basic human level, we are all the same, all worthy of the same sustenance and respect. The meal itself was a silent symphony of cultural exchange. A pilgrim from England might taste olives for the first time, a gift from an Italian traveler. A story about fishing in the North Sea would be traded for a recipe using spices from the Orient, heard from a merchant who joined the table. Language barriers were overcome through the universal vocabulary of passing a shared jug of wine, offering the last piece of cheese to a neighbor, or simply meeting another's eyes and smiling over the warmth of a simple, satisfying meal. This was where the theoretical community of the road became a tangible reality. Friendships were forged over stew pots that would last for the remainder of the journey and often a lifetime. Practical advice about the path ahead was exchanged more freely in this atmosphere of trust and mutual satisfaction than it ever could have been on the lonely trail. The communal meal was the glue that bound the temporary pilgrim society together, reinforcing daily that their strength lay not in solitary struggle, but in shared support. This ancient code of gathering around a table with strangers is experiencing a magnificent revival in our modern era of travel, fundamentally shaping the booming world of food tourism. The rise of the communal table in trendy restaurants and hostels isn't just a clever design choice to maximize seating. It's a conscious attempt to recreate that pilgrim hospice atmosphere, forcing a beautiful and often delightful collision of people who might otherwise never interact. The entire concept of a food tour is built on this code. It's not just about eating, it's about eating together. Strangers become instant companions as they bond over the shared delight of discovering a perfect street food dumpling in Taipei or the collective surprise of tasting a daring local delicacy. Cooking classes offered to travelers in places like Thailand or Italy are the ultimate enactment of this ritual. You don't just eat the food, you learn its stories, you chop its vegetables alongside people from across the globe, and you sit down to enjoy the literal fruits of your collective labor. These experiences understand that the act of preparing and consuming a meal is the fastest and most joyful way to build a bridge between cultures. This enduring practice offers us a simple but profound lesson for our own journeys. It encourages us to actively seek out these opportunities for shared meals. Choose the hostel common kitchen over the anonymous hotel room service. Book a seat at a communal table instead of a private booth. Accept an invitation to a family meal if it's offered. In these settings, food sheds its role as mere sustenance and becomes a catalyst for conversation, a generator of laughter, and a creator of common ground. It reminds us that some of the most authentic flavors of a place aren't found on any menu, but are served in the stories and companionship of the people you break bread with, continuing a 1,000-year-old tradition that proves a shared meal is the oldest and most effective peace treaty ever devised. These ancient pathways were never meant to be easy. In fact, the very opposite was true. The difficulty was the point. This brings us to our 16th code, perhaps the most physically demanding of them all, the intentional design of these routes to test the absolute limits of human endurance and perseverance. Medieval pilgrims didn't have the luxury of choosing a scenic bypass or a gentler grade. The routes to holy sites like Jerusalem or Santiago were often the only viable paths through a brutally challenging landscape, and they were embraced precisely for that reason. The Pyrenees mountains separating France and Spain weren't an unfortunate obstacle on the Camino. They were its spiritual initiation. The relentless, sun-baked plains of Castile weren't a tedious stretch to be endured. They were a furnace for the soul, designed to burn away pride and self-reliance, forcing the traveler into a state of raw dependence and humility. Every aching muscle, every blistered foot, every moment of despair under a crushing backpack was seen not as a failure of the journey, but as its essential curriculum. The path itself was the teacher, and its primary lesson was that true transformation, whether spiritual or personal, is rarely found in comfort. It is forged in the struggle, discovered on the far side of exhaustion, and claimed only by those willing to push past the point where every instinct screams to turn back. This encoded value of struggle as teacher is the very bedrock of the modern adventure travel and endurance challenge industry. When someone signs up to hike the entire Appalachian Trail, to run an ultramarathon through the desert, or to cycle across a continent, they are consciously, and perhaps unknowingly, stepping into the same mindset as that medieval pilgrim. They are not merely seeking a vacation, they are seeking a trial. They are choosing a path guaranteed to introduce them to their own vulnerabilities and their own hidden reserves of strength. The language used is identical. It's about the struggle, hitting the wall, digging deep, and finding out what you're made of. The physical challenge becomes a metaphor for overcoming other obstacles in life: grief, career changes, personal doubts. Reaching the summit of a mountain after a grueling climb provides more than a beautiful view. It provides irrefutable evidence to oneself that perseverance pays off, that limits are often mental illusions, and that growth and confidence are earned, not given. This is the secularization of the pilgrimage, where the destination is no longer a cathedral but a finish line, and the redemption is not spiritual absolution but profound self-knowledge and the quiet pride of having endured. The brilliance of this code is its universal accessibility. You don't need to trek across Spain to engage with it. It whispers to us on any path that asks for a little more than we think we can give. It's present in the decision to walk that extra mile on a local trail when your legs are tired, to choose the steep staircase over the escalator in a foreign city, or to navigate a complex public transit system in a language you don't speak instead of defaulting to an easy taxi ride. These micro-struggles are modern pilgrimages in miniature. They are conscious choices to embrace minor hardship for the sake of a richer, more authentic, and more rewarding experience. They remind us that the most memorable moments of any journey are very often not the easy ones, but the ones we had to fight for. The code of endurance teaches us that the path of least resistance might be comfortable, but it is rarely transformative. By willingly stepping onto a more challenging path, whether for an hour or for months, we honor this ancient wisdom and open ourselves up to the most valuable souvenir any traveler can bring home: a stronger, more resilient, and more capable version of ourselves. Along the winding, often uncertain paths of the great pilgrimages, human travelers were never truly alone. They moved through a living world, sharing the road with creatures who became silent companions and potent symbols. This 17th code reveals how animals, from the smallest bird to the gentlest farmyard beast, were seen as guides, omens, and messengers, encoding the wild wisdom of the natural world directly into the journey's narrative. A flock of swallows suddenly taking flight might be interpreted not just as a change in the weather, but as a divine warning to seek shelter from an approaching storm. A cow patiently grazing by a specific bend in the path could signal a nearby farm and the potential for fresh milk or directions. These encounters were rarely seen as random coincidence. In a worldview where the divine spoke through all creation, animals were active participants in the pilgrimage, their behaviors a form of scripture written in movement and instinct, offering guidance, reassurance, and sometimes caution to those who knew how to read their signs. This symbolic relationship was deeply embedded in the stories and art along the routes. The scallop shell of St. James was often depicted with a pilgrim's staff, but sometimes the saint himself was shown accompanied by a horse, a symbol of steadfast endurance. In the lore of the Via Francigena, tales were told of mysterious white deer or wolves that would appear to lost travelers, leading them back to the safety of the path, not as predators, but as providential guides. This wasn't mere superstition. It was a sophisticated form of ecological awareness and respect. It encoded the understanding that humans are not separate from nature, but deeply intertwined within it, and that paying close attention to the other inhabitants of the landscape could yield practical, even life-saving knowledge. A pilgrim learned to watch the birds for direction, to notice the patterns of livestock for clues about human habitation, and to see in the perseverance of a donkey carrying a heavy load a mirror of their own struggle and determination. The animal world became a living map and a moral compass, its creatures serving as metaphors for virtues like patience, vigilance, and trust in the journey. This ancient, intuitive connection to animals as partners in exploration flourishes in thrilling new forms within modern travel. The entire phenomenon of wildlife tourism, from journeying to the Galapagos to walk among indifferent iguanas to embarking on a safari in Kenya to witness the Great Migration, is a direct continuation of this pilgrim's sense of awe and seeking. We are not just going to see animals, we are going to learn from them, to be humbled by them, and to have our understanding of the natural world expanded by their presence. We seek out guides who can interpret the subtle language of the wild, the alarm call of a monkey, the track of a bear, the breach of a whale. Much like medieval pilgrims relied on locals to explain the meaning of a particular bird's flight. Even our more curated encounters, like swimming with dolphins or hiking with alpacas, tap into this deep-seated need for cross-species connection, acknowledging that animals can be profound teachers of joy, presence, and a different way of being in the world. The Code of Symbolic Animal Guides invites us to re-enchant our own travels by simply paying closer attention to the non-human life we encounter. It's about noticing the hopeful scuttle of a crab on a tropical beach, not just as a bit of local wildlife, but as a resilient creature perfectly adapted to its environment. It's about watching the patient, methodical journey of a caterpillar crossing a forest trail and perhaps seeing a metaphor for our own slow, determined progress. When we choose a travel experience centered around animals, whether it's a bird-watching walk in a local park or a major expedition to see pandas in China, we are participating in an ancient ritual. We are acknowledging that some of the most powerful guides we can have on any journey don't speak our language, don't consult a map, and yet possess an innate wisdom about direction, survival, and belonging that can profoundly deepen our own experience of place and purpose. After pushing their bodies to the limit and finding guidance in the natural world, pilgrims often felt a powerful urge to give something back, to leave a mark of their passage that was more than just a footprint. This impulse is our 18th code, a beautiful and enduring ritual of leaving offerings at the shrines, crosses, and sacred spots that dotted their route. This act was far more than a simple tradition. It was a physical language of the soul, a way to encode complex feelings of gratitude, hope, and personal sacrifice into a tangible object. A pilgrim might place a stone carried from their own village onto a growing cairn at a mountain pass, each rock representing a burden left behind or a prayer for safe passage. They might tie a scrap of cloth to a tree near a healing spring, a physical representation of an illness they wished to be cured or a loved one they were praying for. These were not random acts of litter, they were curated contributions, each one a silent story added to a collective, ever-evolving monument of human experience. The power of this practice lay in its tangible legacy. A weary traveler feeling isolated and doubtful would come across a wayside shrine absolutely covered in these small offerings, stones, flowers, handwritten notes, and simple carvings. In that moment, they were visually connected to the hundreds, even thousands of pilgrims who had stood in that exact same spot, feeling the same mix of exhaustion and devotion. It was a powerful antidote to solitude, a silent chorus of voices saying, "You are not alone, we have been here too, and we left this behind as proof." This created a profound, non-linear community across time, where an offering left by a Saxon peasant in the 11th century could offer comfort to a merchant from Genoa in the 15th. The ritual encoded the understanding that a journey's value isn't fully realized until we contribute something to it, that we are both recipients of the path's grace and its caretakers for those who will follow. This ancient need to leave a positive mark resonates powerfully in the most meaningful corners of modern travel. The tradition of leaving a note in a hostel guestbook, sharing tips about a great local restaurant or a hidden beach, is the direct descendant of that pilgrim's stone. It's a small offering of hard-won knowledge left for the next traveler, a way to pay forward the kindnesses we've received on our own journey. The growing ethos of voluntourism, where travelers dedicate a day or a week to a local conservation project helping to clean a beach, rebuild a trail, or assist in an animal sanctuary, is this code enacted on a grander scale. It's the understanding that our passage through a place shouldn't be purely extractive. We should also strive to leave it a little better than we found it. Even the simple, conscious act of spending money at a family-owned shop instead of an international chain, or contributing to a local fundraiser, is a modern offering. It's a tangible investment in the community that has hosted us, ensuring its vitality for future visitors. This code invites us to think of ourselves not just as tourists, but as temporary participants in the ongoing story of a place. It challenges the old model of travel that was only about what we can see and take the photos, the souvenirs, the experiences. It proposes a new, more reciprocal model that also asks what we can give. What small offering can we leave behind? It doesn't have to be physical. It might be the patience and respect we show while learning a few words of the local language. It could be the genuine conversation we have with a shopkeeper, affirming the value of their craft, or it could be the decision to pack out more trash than we brought in on a hike. These are the contemporary prayers and stones we leave at the wayside, the rituals that transform us from passive consumers of a destination into active, grateful partners in its enduring legacy. After days or even weeks of relentless walking, with muscles aching and the mind worn thin by the sheer monotony of the road, the pilgrim's inner world would often open up in a surprising way, through the vivid, unpredictable landscape of dreams. This 19th code delves into the ancient practice of interpreting these nocturnal visions, a ritual that turned the humble roadside inn or monastery dormitory into a kind of collective therapy session. Exhaustion, a change in diet, and the constant low-grade fear of the unknown all conspired to produce dreams of startling clarity and emotional power. A pilgrim might dream of flying over the very mountains they were struggling to climb, or of a long-dead relative offering a cryptic piece of advice. Come morning, these dreams weren't dismissed as mere neural static. They were shared around the breakfast fire and pored over with the seriousness of scholars deciphering a sacred text. Some saw them as direct messages from God or saints, offering guidance, warning of dangers ahead, or affirming they were on the right path. Others viewed them as a mirror held up to the soul, revealing hidden fears, unacknowledged hopes, or internal conflicts that the busy waking mind had successfully suppressed. This practice encoded a deep value for introspection and the mysteries of the subconscious, acknowledging that the most important part of the journey wasn't always happening on the path outside, but on the path within. The act of sharing these dreams served a crucial social and psychological function. For travelers far from home and any traditional support network, discussing a frightening or confusing dream was a way to ask for comfort and interpretation from their temporary community. A more experienced pilgrim might reassure a younger one that dreaming of a raging river wasn't a premonition of doom, but a symbol of the emotional turmoil they were currently navigating. This created a powerful bond of vulnerability and trust, allowing people to share their deepest anxieties without shame. Monasteries along the route often had monks skilled in the art of dream interpretation, weaving together classical knowledge, biblical symbolism, and local folklore to help pilgrims find meaning in their visions. This entire process transformed the journey into a holistic experience, engaging the body through walking, the spirit through prayer, and the mind through this deep, reflective work on the contents of their own subconscious. The path was not just leading them to a physical destination, it was guiding them on a parallel journey of self-discovery, where dreams were the signposts and fellow travelers were the guides. This ancient impulse to seek meaning in our travel dreams is powerfully alive today, though we might use different language to describe it. The entire concept of a wellness or therapy retreat, especially one held in an exotic or tranquil location, is a modern secular pilgrimage that actively encourages this kind of deep introspection. Participants are invited to keep journals, meditate, and yes, to pay attention to their dreams, understanding that a change of scenery can shake loose insights that our regular routine keeps buried. The practice of keeping a detailed travel journal has always been, for many, a form of dream catching, a place to record not just what they did, but how they felt, what they feared, and the strange, symbolic narratives that played out in their sleep in a foreign bed. We intuitively understand that travel disrupts our normal patterns, and in that disruption, our inner world speaks more loudly. A dream about missing a flight might not be prophetic, but a reflection of our anxiety about a new job waiting back home. A joyful dream of swimming in a clear ocean could be our subconscious affirming a recent decision to be more open and emotionally fluid. This code invites us to become more conscious, curious archivists of our inner lives while we journey. It suggests that the most fascinating souvenir we might bring back from a trip isn't a thing, but a piece of self-knowledge delivered in the symbolic language of a dream. It encourages us to take a moment in the morning before reaching for the phone to lie still and recall the night's visions, to jot down a few notes about them in a journal. You don't need to be a trained psychoanalyst to find value in this. Simply asking yourself what emotion the dream carried, or what its most striking image might represent to you, can unlock surprising clarity. By honoring this ancient practice, we engage in a deeper, more integrated form of travel. We acknowledge that we are exploring two worlds simultaneously: the vibrant, external world of new cultures and landscapes, and the equally vast, mysterious internal world of our own psyche, and that the most transformative discoveries often await us at the intersection of the two. These local legends were far more than simple campfire tales to entertain weary travelers. They were a sophisticated narrative technology, a way for communities to encode their deepest values, their greatest fears, and their collective history directly onto the landscape itself. A dense, dark forest wasn't just a collection of trees, It was the home of a specific dragon from a local legend, a story that served as a very effective way to keep children from wandering too far and to warn travelers to stick to the known path. A strangely shaped rock formation on a hilltop wasn't a geological accident. It was the petrified remains of a giant from a creation myth, explaining the very origins of the valley below. A humble spring providing fresh water wasn't just a fortunate resource. It was the very spot where a merciful saint struck the ground with her staff to save her followers from thirst, forever sanctifying the source. Every mountain, river, and cave could hold a story, and these stories transformed the physical world into a living, breathing storybook. Pilgrims walking these routes weren't just moving through geography. They were walking through a narrative, and with each step, they absorbed the moral and cultural DNA of the places they passed through. Hearing a tale of a miserly innkeeper who was turned to stone for turning away a starving pilgrim reinforced the sacred code of hospitality. A legend about a humble farmer rewarded for his generosity encoded the community's value of charity. These stories provided a shared cultural framework, a way for locals to impart their worldview to the constant stream of outsiders passing through, ensuring that their identity and lessons were carried forward long after the individual traveler had moved on. This ancient practice of using myth to give meaning to place is the very heart of the most immersive and memorable guided experiences available to travelers today. The best local guides in any corner of the world are the modern-day equivalents of those medieval storytellers. They don't just recite dry facts and dates, they weave the rich tapestry of local legend into their tours, allowing you to see a city or a landscape through the eyes of those who have lived there for generations. A walk through the ancient alleyways of Edinburgh becomes infinitely more captivating when your guide shares the chilling tales of Burke and Hare, stories that speak to the city's complex history of medicine and morality. A hike through the misty forests of Japan's Yakushima Island is transformed when you learn the local folklore that inspired the beloved Studio Ghibli film Princess Mononoke, seeing in the gnarled cedar trees not just plants but ancient protective spirits. Even on a culinary tour through New Orleans, the stories behind dishes like gumbo, a melting pot of West African, French, and Choctaw influences, aren't just food trivia. They are the foundational legends of the city itself, tales of resilience, creativity, and cultural fusion told through every delicious spoonful. Engaging with this 20th code invites us to be more than just passive sightseers. It calls us to become active listeners for the soul of a place. It means choosing the walking tour that promises ghost stories and local lore over the one that only lists historical dates. It means asking a waiter in a small village tavern not just what's good on the menu, but if there's a story behind the name of a particular dish. It means pausing to read the plaque on a seemingly ordinary statue and discovering the legend of the hero or monster it represents. In our digital age, this even extends to the podcasts and audio tours we might listen to while exploring a new city, where a well-told story can layer a bustling modern street with the echoes of its fascinating past. By seeking out these local myths, we do more than just learn interesting facts. We connect with the emotional and symbolic heart of a destination. We understand that a place is not defined solely by its buildings or its natural beauty, but by the stories its people tell about who they are, where they came from, and what they believe. These legends are the secret keys that unlock a deeper, more resonant travel experience, allowing us to journey not just across land, but through time and into the very imagination of the cultures we visit. These temporary communities that formed along the ancient routes were perhaps the most profound and lasting of all the codes, a living laboratory for human connection that demonstrated a radical idea, that a diverse group of strangers, bound only by a shared direction and a common purpose, could create a micro-society built on mutual support, respect, and collective well-being. Imagine the composition of one of these groups making its way to Santiago. Walking side by side might be a wealthy merchant from Genoa, a penitent farmer from Germany seeking forgiveness, an adventurous scholar from Oxford, and a widow from France praying for her family's health. In the outside world, their social stations would have dictated a rigid hierarchy, but on the path, those old rules were often suspended. Their shared identity as pilgrims and their collective vulnerability to the same hardships, blistered feet, stormy weather, the threat of bandits created a powerful social leveling effect. The merchant's money couldn't dry his clothes in a downpour, and the farmer's strength couldn't prevent him from getting lost. They needed each other. The strong would help the weak over a difficult pass. Those who spoke multiple languages would translate for the group, and food would be shared to ensure no one starved. This micro-society wasn't built on law or coercion, but on a voluntarily adopted code of conduct that valued compassion over status, collaboration over competition, and the strength of the community over the survival of the individual. It was a fleeting glimpse of a different way for humans to organize themselves, one that proved that a powerful sense of belonging could be forged not by shared origin, but by shared journey. This legacy of intentional, transient community is arguably the most vibrant and visible of all the ancient codes in our modern world, exploding into a myriad of forms that define 21st century travel. The entire concept of group travel, from guided hiking tours on the Inca Trail to educational cruises through the Greek islands, is a direct continuation of this pilgrim model. People choose these experiences not just for the convenience, but for the specific desire to journey within a curated community of like-minded strangers, knowing that the shared challenges and triumphs will accelerate the bonding process. The digital nomad movement takes this a step further, creating global, roaming communities that settle in hubs like Bali or Lisbon for months at a time. These are the new monastic hospices, co-working spaces, and co-living arrangements where entrepreneurs, artists, and remote workers from every corner of the globe form intense, supportive networks, sharing skills, business advice, and personal stories just as pilgrims once did, their shared purpose being not a religious shrine, but a lifestyle of freedom and location-independent creation. Perhaps the most powerful evolution of this code is found in the rise of volunteer tourism and humanitarian travel, when people journey together to build a school in Nepal, to assist in an archaeological dig in Italy, or to help conserve a rainforest in Costa Rica. They are participating in the purest form of this ancient practice. Their shared purpose is not internal salvation, but external contribution. The diverse team that gathers, a retired engineer from Canada, a university student from Brazil, a teacher from Japan, is instantly united by a common goal that transcends their individual backgrounds. The physical work they do together, the problem solving, and the collective fatigue at the end of a productive day recreate the exact conditions that bonded pilgrims centuries ago, forging a powerful sense of camaraderie and leaving behind a positive, tangible impact that benefits the place they visited long after they depart. This code proves that the most fulfilling journeys are often those where we look up from our own path to walk beside others, discovering that in the act of supporting our fellow travelers, we find the deepest sense of connection and purpose the road has to offer. From the silent guidance of waymarkers to the profound quiet of mindful reflection, these 21 codes reveal a stunning truth. The greatest innovations in travel aren't found in our technology, but in our humanity. Medieval pilgrims, with their scallop shells and shared stories, their celestial navigation and sacred meals, were the original master travelers. They understood that a journey's true value isn't measured in miles covered or monuments checked off a list, but in the depth of connection forged to the land, to the people they met, and to the person they became along the way. These routes were not just paths to a destination. They were sprawling, open-air universities of the soul, teaching lessons in resilience through mountain passes, lessons in trust through shared bread, and lessons in wonder through a sky full of unfamiliar stars. And what's truly breathtaking is how these ancient lessons are not locked away in history books. They are alive and well, woven into the very fabric of how we explore today. Every time we choose a homestay for a genuine cultural exchange, we are honoring the code of hospitality. When we pause on a hike to simply listen to the wind, we are practicing the code of silence. That sense of instant camaraderie with a fellow backpacker you've just met, that's the legacy of the Pilgrim community. Our modern passports, our travel playlists, our love for local markets and transformative challenges, they are all direct descendants of these medieval innovations. The tools have changed, but the human desires behind them for safety, for meaning, for connection remain utterly timeless. So as you dream up your next adventure, whether it's a weekend road trip or a year-long odyssey, I invite you to carry a piece of this ancient wisdom with you. Look for the modern equivalents of these codes. Be the traveler who leaves a place better than they found it, who seeks out the local legend, who isn't afraid to unplug and listen. Choose the path that challenges you, and don't forget to look up from the map to truly see the stars. The world is still filled with hidden guides and silent teachers if we only know how to look. I'd love to hear which of these 21 codes resonates most with your own travels. Share your stories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through history's hidden pathways, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss our next exploration. Until then, may your own path be rich with discovery, your heart open to unexpected connections, and your journeys always bring you home to yourself, transformed.